Water, the basis of all life. There's not a single place on Earth where it cannot be found, from the Appalachians to the Rockies or even the deserts of Africa. And I've been around it since I was little. Okay, maybe not that little. That's more like it. I've grown up swimming, kayaking the Finger Lakes of New York, and I've even been sailing since I was about the age of 5. And all this exposure has really made me appreciate water and its beauty. I canoe, I whitewater raft, and heck, I even drive my car through it. Plus, I drink a few liters of water every day. But, according to the UN, 783 million people, even if they have water, drink water that looks like what my Jeep went through. And on top of that, over 2.5 billion people don't have adequate sanitation. This has led to the UN General Assembly explicitly recognizing that water and sanitation are essential to human rights. Yet, this still happens.
We begin with hundreds of thousands of people in Toledo, Ohio without water now for a second day. They're having to live without the most basic necessities, limited showers, no washing dishes.
Breaking news tonight, the governor of Ohio has declared a state of emergency in one of the state's biggest cities. Residents in Toledo are stranded without any drinking water.
Flint's tap water was laced with dangerous levels of lead. The state knew about it and did nothing.
Bolivia's government has declared a national emergency because of a water shortage as it suffers the worst drought in 25 years. The country's capital gets water for just 3 hours a day.
Although there are water crises happening all over the world, 3 have happened within 2 hours of where I live in Northwest Ohio that have impacted millions. Those, as you heard in some of the news clips, are Flint, Detroit, and Toledo. In addition, all of these water crises are still happening to some degree as of May 2017. Detroit continues to shut off the water of its customers with delinquent bills. Flint is still reliant on bottled water, and Toledo still continues to fight algal blooms. Due to the fact that I live in Toledo, that is going to be the focus of this documentary. In August of 2014, Toledo Mayor Dean Michael Collins issued a do not drink warning for over 500,000 people who rely on the city of Toledo for their drinking water. And long lines like this became quite common.
Okay, come on this way. Thank you.
Like heaven, I'm tired. I just want to get my water and go home.
The ground zero of this warning was the Toledo Water Treatment Facility. The Toledo Water Treatment Plant processes more than 26 billion gallons of water for more than 500,000 people. Ever since 9/11, tours are no longer given, and the facility is protected by 2 barbed wire fences and 24-hour-a-day surveillance. However, this only protects from human threats and not those in the water. And by that, I mean algae blooms. But more on that later. At the end of the 4-day water crisis, it would be announced that the city would take steps to make sure that this did not happen again. The city of Toledo also took steps to increase the transparency in their water treatment. The first way they're doing this is by using the Luft WS501 that sits 6 feet above the water. The Nortec AWAC sits on the bottom and looks up. Lastly, the YSI EX02 is deployed both 2 feet below the surface and 14 feet below the surface. So the layout ends up looking something like this, with 4 total sensors. These sensors work together to give us these following images. Here you see 2 clips, one from August 7th of 2014, 3 days after the water crisis, and the exact same camera 2 years later on August 7th of 2016. As you can see, there's barely any change in the algal bloom-infested waters. But this is hardly the first time that Lake Erie has had to deal with pollution.
The complexity of all pollution problems is exemplified by Lake Erie. It involves 25 polluted rivers and the sewage of 9 million people, 118 towns and 146 industries, in 5 U.S. states and 1 Canadian province. This is the shadow of progress. There are rivers in which bacteria have been estimated at 1,500 times human safety level.
Now instead of it being bacteria, it's chemicals like nitrate and phosphorus.
Nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus found in sewage and fertilizer overfeed the algae, and the lake, made warmer from climate change, provides a comfortable environment for the algae to thrive.
And now the lake looks like this. That's where this comes in. A balanced diet for Lake Erie is by the International Joint Commission, which is a group of both Canadian and American scientists that get together and talk about Lake Erie and its long-term health. In this document, they state, climate change could exacerbate the magnitude, duration, and frequency of hypoxia in Lake Erie. To summarize this document, the International Joint Commission says that agricultural runoff is primarily to blame for our algal bloom problems, and by using better farming practices, we can help control them. So, wondering what this looks like? Well, this is pretty much it. It's pretty boring. It's a farm field, in fact. But a lot of things start here, including the water that comes out of your faucet.
Phosphorus and the nutrients in general are coming from fertilizers applied to the land or manure from an animal operation.
Corn, soybeans, and wheat are all users of phosphate, so we have to have it. If we would stop applying phosphate at all to our soils, it would be a real drag on our farm's ability to grow crops. We can get phosphate from different forms, but the most popular form is dry fertilizer that we apply to our field.
This has led farmers like Terry to implement systems like the one you see here. These machines take samples that are then analyzed by The Ohio State University. This will help determine the best way to apply phosphorus to limit runoff into our water supply and Lake Erie. Although farming is the main culprit, urban runoff is still a serious issue, but as Parwinder Gruhl explains, there are some solutions.
I'm sitting here in a biphasic bioretention system, which is commonly called a rain garden. What it is basically using nature's principles to help us clean the water. We have results that show 100% removal of nitrates and phosphates.
So, going back to that algae that I showed you earlier, you would probably think that this was taken out at Lake Erie, but you'd be wrong. It was taken right in Oak Openings. A place called Evergreen Lake, to be specific, which just so happens to be my favorite place in all of our metro parks. And you can see why. However, right next to all of this natural beauty is a farm, and all of that farm's runoff goes straight into the lake, causing algae. The shores are now covered in a murky brown substance, and whatever isn't covered in algae just simply stinks due to the presence of it. Irresponsible farming practices have led to the demise of one of the most beautiful places in our area, and it's not stopping there. This is where cities like San Diego come in. San Diego has an app called Waste No Water. Its goal is to do exactly as it says, conserve water, but also protect it. From the app, residents can police themselves by reporting wasted water, or even request a water quality sample test be taken right from their smartphone. Furthermore, residents can enter their location to allow for a quicker response time from the city, along with attached photos so that workers already know the issue upon arrival, cutting down repair times drastically and in turn, the wasting of water. Beyond that, the app shows active bulletins, restrictions, and news all regarding the city's water in an effort to keep the public up to date. Just imagine the positive outcomes if Ohioans had access to an app like Waste No Water. We could reduce runoff and in turn reduce algal blooms that eventually make their way into our water. There is a similar campaign in Detroit. Over the last 3 years, the city has shut off water to over 70,000 households due to delinquent water bills. The U.S. Census defines a household as 3 to 4 people, so that's nearly 500,000 people without clean drinking water to use for bathing, cooking, or drinking. This has led to the creation of the Detroit Water Brigade. They're a nonprofit in Detroit that distributes bottled water to over 40% of residents that do not have running water. Yes, 40%. They function as one of the only ways for the poor, ill, or elderly to have access to water. In order to combat this problem, the city of Detroit has invested heavily into something called City Insight. Detroit owned and operated City Insight promises to allow residents to gain accurate depictions of usage along with have an easier way to pay bills. An app like this could easily turn horror stories like Detroit into things of the past. You know there's something wrong when the water that comes out of your tap can be just as deadly as a wall of water 30 feet tall. Water is a right, not a privilege. And the sooner our leaders realize that, the sooner we'll be on our way towards a healthy planet and healthy people on it. If there's one thing all of this should teach you, it's that oftentimes the government will not do the right things for its citizens and their health. We cannot allow men and women hundreds of miles away to place profit over health. So if you see something that concerns you, call your representative and let your voice be heard. So beyond that, what can you do to help improve drinking water? Well, you can start by using less of it. Take shorter showers, wash dishes more efficiently, and you even use a low-flow toilet, like this bidet. And lastly, if you see a crisis, extend a helping hand. Sometimes it only takes a little bit of time and money to make a huge difference. I think regardless of your political views, we can all agree that we want, scratch that we need clean drinking water, here, there, and everywhere. In the end, it will be water that will determine whether we live in a scene from Robots or a scene from Mad Max.
I want them back! They're my property!
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Want to get through this?
Let's go!
This is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now, you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.